how can I make you co-host over here? Uh-huh. More. Uh, I don't see all that stuff. I'm at the three dots. What I'm seeing is start recording, show captions, notes, polls, quizzes, YouTube live stream, meeting info. Would it be at the meeting info? Okay. Hi everyone, please kindly bear with us. Just a couple of minutes. Meeting info. It is not here. Settings. Okay. Okay, I'm not able to see it either, but I think we just should get started. It's okay. I'll have to multitask. I'll try to find a way to do it. Yeah. If you guys, yeah, yeah, no problem. I totally understand. All right. Okay, I think we can get started now. Could you start recording on your side, Itu?
Hmm?
Okay, awesome.
Recording in progress.
Okay, very good. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming in through today to our webinar. My name is Hazel, and I speak a lot. I'm everywhere. I'm pretty sure most people do know me. We are here today, gathered here to basically have more intel from people who have already experienced this journey. So we all know that it's very easy to get into, kindergartens, training centers. It's like super, super easy, that's an easy job. But then the end goal is always making sure that we get into international schools and other well-recognized K-12 schools. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have our two guests who are going to share their experiences. And we also did have a discussion earlier on that it's not only just something that is only just abroad, when it comes, with time, these are also going to be requirements that are going to be required by our government back home, considering that most people here are South Africans, if not all. So in South Africa, for you to be able to get into a school, you have to either have a Bachelor of Education, which is acquired through four-year program, including the practicals, or you can have any degree and then have a postgraduate certificate in education, also known as the EGCE PGCE as well. So yeah, the process there, I would say, is a lot easier. And also here in China is a lot easier. But then it's not all schools that I'm talking about good schools now that are very easy to get into, like how, everyone is in kindergartens or training centers. So today we're going to be diving deep into not just stuff that we just read, from online or stuff that we see on social media, but we're going to have people who have lived those experiences, and they're going to be sharing their journeys. So please make sure that you gather up all your questions and beforehand, and then you allow the speaker first to speak, and then you have all your questions. For the people who prefer not to speak or show their face, that is also okay. You can just type in your questions, and then the guest and I might be able to read your questions on the chat box. Yeah. Oh, I see the chat box. Okay, cool. Right. Okay, so our first guest is going to be Thomas, and then after Thomas, we're going to have Shakespeare. So on the melanated group, a lot of people came from there. They are aware of Mr. Shakespeare, and not just the EFH group, also the EFH group as well. Yeah. So we're going to get started right now. Thomas, are we all good on your
Hey,
side?
all good my side. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic Sunday. Hazel, if I can, maybe the best way to do this is if someone has a question while I'm talking, let's just take questions as we go. If someone
Okay,
can
that's
type it
fine.
in the chat box, we'll deal with it. Cool.
Okay, that's fine. And also, I just want to say also another thing that we were supposed to mention earlier on. Each person has 3 questions, and also you don't just ask all those questions at the same time. So there normally is a queue. Yeah, so the people who want to speak, please do use those icons at the bottom of your screens where you can be able to raise your hand, and then you just ask one question at a time, and then you rejoin the queue so that we can also let other people speak as well, and we don't take too much time, from people who have already made time for us tonight. Thank you. You can go on, Thomas. Thank you.
Okay, hey guys, please call me Tom. I just as a way of background, I have a BA honors in English literature from Rhodes University, Makanda, Eastern Cape. And then I went on to do a PGCE at the University of the Witwatersrand in 2011. And I've been teaching ever since at South African high schools, all boys and co-ed environment back home, which is where I cut my teeth. And then I'm now teaching at a public school in Beijing, China, where we have a College Board AP program. All of my students go to top 30 schools in the US. That's the majority. About 90% of our kids go to the US, and then some go to Canada, the UK, and Australia. And our goal from our parents is to push kids into top performing universities. So we have some of our kids or some of our past students are busy pursuing masters and PhD level study at Oxford and Cambridge. We have a few going through the Ivy League system in the United States. So our goal from our school, and one of the aspects I'll talk about in a moment, is meeting schools' expectations and requirements. But our goal and our drive at school is to make sure that we're getting kids ready to perform at the highest of the high level globally. And I must say, I am blown away by the work ethic and talent of these kind of regular middle class Chinese kids. We're not a fancy international school. We're a regular run of the mill public high school in Beijing. And our kids are phenomenal, just open-hearted, warm, incredibly enthusiastic, disciplined kids. So that's in a nutshell where I've come from and what I do. I don't know if there are any questions about that as we go. If nothing, I'll move on. Okay, so in terms of making the transition into international school or international school teaching on the one hand versus kind of any higher level grade 10 to 12 focus, teaching license is becoming a really big deal. I know China had a time where with a master's degree or an undergraduate degree, with the right connections and building the right pathways, you could get into these programs. What we're starting to see now is that headmasters and school leadership are really starting to put a premium on being a licensed qualified educator. Now, for us in the South African context, that means a Bachelor of Education or a postgraduate certificate in education, both of which are legitimate pathways. I teach, one of my South African colleagues at my school has a B.Ed, so she's a B.Ed focus, I'm a PGCE focus. And what we found is our center principal, who is Canadian, and our Chinese school leadership are they're deeply respectful of South African labor. I think we work hard. They know we work hard. They know, generally speaking, that we're trustworthy, and they do respect our academic qualifications. So I don't see any I don't see any barrier to entry at a good school with a good reputation in being a South African or having South African credentials or qualifications. But the pressure is on to have at least a PGCE or through a QTS type system. A formal teaching license and qualification is really it's going to be the backbone of getting into that space. I don't know if Shakespeare's had a similar experience. If he wants to weigh in there.
Yeah, his experience is totally different. Yeah, because he's the one with all those crazy qualifications. But yeah, Mr. Shakespeare, would you like to add on anything onto that?
I mean, I started. I think I'm a bit older than all of you. So I started with I have a degree at university, which is B.A, PGCE, and oh, by the way, I'm currently working for I would say probably the oldest school in Beijing, which is we recruit students from all different levels, and we send them to other countries' top 10 or top 20 universities. So it's quite an advanced program. We also do AP, but we also have the IBDP, and specifically we also have Cambridge. But this is your time, so I think you can continue. I think we can share a lot of things after this.
Perfect, amazing. All right, so some advice in the interview process, Hazel. I was just thinking about how to best approach this. So you've got to. Hi, is that Jacqueline?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think she's muted now.
No worries. So I think one of the most difficult things to do is to get yourself noticed and to get on a headmaster's desk. And I've been helping actually 2 young teachers get this job done. And the one young gentleman has responded amazingly and really took my advice to heart. And that landed up actually getting him through the filter of what, the CVs that get kicked out versus the CVs that end up on center principals desks. And the one most important thing is to really be able to show your competence. What my CP has said to me is that we can't, as schools in China or anywhere in the world, we can't afford to take on young professionals who are going to be a burden. If someone's going to come into our staff room and we're going to have to hold their hand on every single decision and help them through every aspect of classroom management and every aspect of preparation and planning, it puts an administrative burden on us that we'll end up effectively having to do that person's job for them. So it's really important that you put yourself across as a competent young professional with the appropriate qualifications and with the appropriate skill set, that you can walk into that environment and you can thrive as an independent professional. Obviously, that doesn't mean you can't ask for help, and it doesn't mean that you can't lean on the school structures when you need to. But the main goal is to really, really push yourself as someone who can stand on their own 2 feet and add value to the professional and to the environment of the school as a whole. So be authentic, be yourself. Work in a way that you can put across your natural personality and your natural energy, something that I find South Africans probably do better than anyone I've met. I mean, all of us will know what it's like working in a staff environment that's got 2 or 3 South Africans on the staff. In terms of staff room antics and energy and vibe, we'll end up monopolizing and taking over quite quickly because of our unique blend of verbal intelligence with our academic skills and background. So that's really critical. So headmasters really want to see that you can stand on your own and that you're going to be an independent professional. What else do I need to add to that one? Are there any questions there?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, let's start with the age one. Someone asked about the age, if age plays a role in the selection, and if there's any limits for teaching in China.
Okay, so
for K-12 schools and international schools. I know kindergartens usually have like around the 40s, because obviously you interact with young kids and you must be aesthetic.
I know at my school and in other or comparable schools where I have friends that are placed. So our school has an average staff age of, I think we're about at the moment about 47. That's our average. I think the youngest person working on our staff is 32. Our center principal doesn't like to employ young people for various different reasons. Number one, obviously it costs our school a lot of money to bring staff over from outside China into China. So every time we bring someone in, there's a risk attached to that, there's also a reputational risk attached to that. If we push a new parent, a teacher onto parents, and the teacher carries the school brand with them when they walk into the classroom, and if that becomes a disaster, it's traumatic for the school. It's traumatic for the young teacher who's not equipped and prepared for that environment. So we really like to employ people over 30 years old because we find them to be more stable. They have the requisite like classroom management and experience, and that they can stand on their own 2 feet. That's really what we're looking for. So anywhere for us at my school, over 30 is ideal. Other schools have different ways to approach this issue. I know that there are schools in Shanghai and Beijing who like younger staff because they feel that they can capitalize on the young staff energy and push young staff really hard to give a lot of added value back to the school, but it depends on the school. So there are different management styles that like a different age profile in different institutions. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be a hard and fast rule about what age is appropriate for a school.
Yeah, just to also add on that as well. In my school, when I first got in, I was 24, 25 now. I've been there for a year. Being the youngest, like I'm the youngest candidate they've ever taken. So that being said, my boss did let me know about that because I also asked, about the questions because everyone there is like over 30. And then they just said that like recently at that particular time when I was, getting on board, they did tell me that they just wanted like this shift, to have like I would say, obviously 30 and 40 is very young as well, but they just wanted to basically see if they go through this way, how is it going to be, to the company, if you know what I'm saying. So it's not only, I think I'll just add on to what you were saying, that each school has its own way of doing it. In my school, they had said the minimum age would have to be 30. And then recently they took someone who's, very young, which is me. So each school is, has their own ways of doing it. I have a colleague who also works at HD school, which is also, I have a friend who also works at HD school, which is also a international bilingual school. And they recently had a teacher who is 21 years old, and that teacher recently quit. So I think it also, when they say like they don't want anyone who's younger than 30, obviously in your 20s and your young 20s, you're free, you're just living life as, carefree. And if another opportunity comes in through, you can just, drop everything and just move, compared to someone maybe who's like more settled in life. If you move with your family here in Beijing or China, anywhere abroad, you are going to be settled there for a longer time compared to someone who's younger, Yeah. So, Edu, can we have the next question, please?
Hazel, I can take this one. The Nandi, hey, listen, a SAY certificate is a I guess you could call it a professional ethics body that sits on top of your PGCE or your B.Ed. So you have to be a qualified educator, and then you can go and join the South African Council of Educators. So they're our professional governing body. It's almost like in law, the law analogy would be you go get your LLB, and then you've got to join the Bar Association after you've finished the academic qualification. So the South African, the SAY certificate they're completely separate things. and you do need both. Certainly to teach in South Africa, you need both. Sorry. And Shakespeare's 100. So Shakespeare's 100% there is that you need a child safety certificate in the international school space. I have a suspicion that we're going to start working towards rolling out child safety requirements across all schooling in China, that it's not going to just be isolated to the international school space going forward. But SACE to certainly to teach in South Africa, SACE registration is mandatory.
President. All right, can we please take the next question, Itu?
I think it's best that we hold that question over for Shakespeare, unless Shakespeare wants to deal with that immediately.
I mean, it's difficult to answer that question because I don't know the context of this. Let's continue the conversation, and I think we'll come back to it. We'll kind of circle around that because there are many ways to the same thing. So I mean, let's finish everything and then we can come back to that topic. Okay.
Can I? I'm so sorry. I have no idea where I'd be able to do that.
Look,
I'm not,
if we go to Kefi's question, I suspect any school in China, as long as it's a legitimate qualification and it's above board, and that the Chinese recognize the university that has issued that qualification, it shouldn't be a problem whether it's a US qualification or an Australian qualification. So I don't see any natural barrier or any concern for it being a US university issuing, as long as it's a university that the Chinese recognize.
Right. I take that question.
But moving into primary school later with a kindergarten background.
Hello?
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm following that question.
Yeah. That is more going to depend on what exactly she's studying. Sorry, Tom, about this one. Yeah, it's going to depend on which level she's teaching, or she's getting her certificate in. For example, if you are doing like an IB certificate or any IB qualifications, and you're working at a kindergarten, let's say maybe you're doing like PYP level. If you're doing PYP level, which qualifies you for primary school, and then maybe you are at a kindergarten, you have to do your pracs at the recognized or the same levels. And it also has to be approved by the university as well. So I would say that they mostly have to check with the university first, because it's the university that's going to be able to answer them, because it is the one that approves or disapproves of like internships or practicals that you need to do. With mine, how I got into my school when I was also doing my AMS, I legit approached a friend of a friend, who then spoke with Benjamin, who's my boss, and that's how I got into the school. So when I was doing my pracs for 3 months there, I then, 3 months on paper, I needed to do it at an international school, even though at that particular time I was working at a kindergarten. So yeah, it depends on the qualification, what exactly you are studying, and you cannot be maybe studying like IBDP and then you're going to be teaching PYP level, which is primary school level. So it has to align with the level that you are gaining your qualification from.
And I think, Hazel, just to add on to what you're saying there, there's some work that has to be done by candidates to really try to understand the aims and objectives of the people they're trying to work for. So if the school environment is saying, I want X, Y, and Z from a candidate, we've really got to try and mold ourselves and see, well, I want to go to this place in my career in 4, 5 or 10 years time. How do I shape my pathway to meet the school's objectives, aims and objectives? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're serving an institution and getting rewarded for it financially, but we have to make sure that we are aligned with the goals of the employer. And that's obviously true for any sector, but particularly true in education and contract labor in China, where our roles are really narrowly defined. In South African schools, it's different because you have to be a jack of all trades and coach rugby and whatever. But here, you're kind of walking into your subject, and you've really got to be narrowly focused on meeting what the school needs of you and fulfilling that to the best of your ability, and really kind of going to the market and signposting that I can do that job specifically. And explaining your core competencies and doing it to the best of your ability. If you can do that, there are legitimate employment opportunities available in China.
I agree with you on that one. One of the aspects of education in China is that parents are willing to spend a lot of money on their children. So, for example, when the AI classes are introduced, the kids are told, bring a laptop, and all the kids immediately get MacBooks, which is between 12 to 15,000 RMB each. And the teachers with their Windows computers come to me and they say, well, the kids are coming with MacBooks and I don't know what MacBook is and I don't know how to use it. It's a bit difficult for me. And all I say is you have to meet the market. If the kids are coming with MacBooks, if all the parents have agreed and the school policies have a MacBook, it makes sense that you would do some training on a MacBook. And they say, but it's expensive. And then I said, well, go speak to the school and then they give you a discount and you can buy your own MacBook. But that is what the market demands. You cannot insist on going to an AI class with a Windows computer when 16 or 17 of your kids are using MacBooks. So it doesn't make any sense. So you're right. Meet the students where they are, and kind of adapt to the market.
I cannot iterate how correct Shakespeare is there. I fully agree. We often, especially South Africans, we taught from a young age as well to think big and to walk into spaces and try and make big impact. And I think that we've got to kind of go back and roll it back, look at and meet the kids meet the parents where they are at, understand the roles of the stakeholders that are given school, and make sure that you are giving your kids and giving their parents and giving the school what they need in order to justify and retain your employment for an indefinite period in the future. So meet the market. I think that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for answering that. Itu, may we move on to the next question, please? Hey, Itu, are you there?
Yes, I was. We are moving from the non-native to a native distinction, and we are looking at qualifications based rather than a specific English program. So as an example, I would look at, for example, how science has evolved in China. You used to be able to teach science with just a degree. And then slowly they started asking people with science degrees. And then they asked people who were trained as science teachers. And then finally, now they don't care where you come from as long as you have a specialty in science. And I think that non-native distinction is kind of blurring for subjects rather than overall. So there are still jobs for natives and non-natives, specifically English. But in my school, the head of the English research department is from a non-native country, and his third language is English. And he got that purely because he has a master's degree from a US university. I think it was top 20. He has 5 years experience. He knows the grammar better than I do. And that kind of gives him that ability to apply for that job. And it always used to be held by a native speaker. But I think that distinction from native and non-native is becoming blurred, especially as non-natives are now getting degrees from English-speaking countries, and they're coming to China with qualifications. And you will see that specifically in my school. Over the last 5 years, we've increased the number of Indians who are coming in with science and math diplomas and degrees, and they are really good at teaching math and science. And slowly the results kind of speak for themselves, because we use an international system called MAP, which is a benchmark for the US system. So our students are learning in the Chinese curriculum in math, but they do the test, which is the US-based math besides the CNC. And so it doesn't matter where the teacher comes from as long as the MAP tests are high. And that means that used to be taught by a native person from the UK, but he didn't have a qualification in math. He was just translating what the Chinese teacher was teaching, but this person is specialized in that program. So that's what I'm saying. The market for native and non-native is becoming smaller. The kindergarten has a teacher from Morocco, another person from Turkey, and these are all qualified people with degrees who lived in Europe, who have British degrees. If you speak to them, they probably know more grammar than a British person. They probably speak with a better accent than a British person. So there is that kind of compartmentalization. And I noticed that South Africans who come to China with just a degree, they struggle to get the native jobs because the distinction is no longer fixed,
Yeah,
Shakespeare,
and
you
also,
also think,
oh
sorry,
yeah,
if
go
I
ahead.
may, I
Oh,
have a
let me turn camera on.
suspicion. Oh, no worries. Let me do the same. I have just to second what you're saying there. Our head of maths is from Kenya. Our
Yeah.
his maths department is made up of an Iranian and another Pakistani.
Yeah.
Our economics teacher is from Zimbabwe. So we don't have our school has got zero discrimination when it comes to all they're looking at is the core competency. What is your academic background, and are you appropriately qualified to teach that subject at that level? And that is the only question that our school asks. And often I find that the native country kind of discrimination, and I don't mean like as in like unfair racial discrimination. I'm just saying just base level discrimination of the native speaker is more like it's more like an internal. I've seen it more in kindergarten space, but more like an internal school requirement than it is a government policy requirement from the Beijing state. Beijing, certainly I know Beijing does not look, Beijing's not so concerned about that. They are concerned about what your qualifications are and whether you're appropriately qualified for the task.
Yep, exactly. I'm also in Beijing. So the physics teacher, the head of the physics department in my school is from Nigeria. And he's qualified, he has a PhD in physics. The math teachers, their core components are based on their qualifications, not where they come from. And slowly, teachers who are native are being squeezed out because students don't just learn English, they learn other subjects. And these subjects are all taught, of course, they're taught in English, but if you have a specialty in that field, it doesn't matter what your main language is. I think this point was proven. The head of King's College in Wuxi, I think he's from Colombia, and he's in the English department. And I've met a lot of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, these people all coming in, and most of them have studied in the US or the UK, and some of them also from South Africa, from UCT. They're coming in with degrees from native-speaking countries, and they specifically go for fields of education rather than language, kind of programs. And that's where the squeeze is happening, because I thought I was telling Hazel a few days ago, we were looking for 2 teachers, and our main requirement was a Bachelor of Education, a BGC, and kind of an IB certificate, PYP, and just 2 years experience. And 90% of the qualified people who applied were not qualified. And in the end, they were confused because the application was clear. you had to have a PYP qualification, but people
Mm.
just didn't read the qualification requirement. And I think many schools are doing that. They're looking, but the people applying are not meeting them at what they are, are kind of asking for. And one of the aspects of my job, I remember, I think I spoke to Jez about this maybe a few months ago. One of the reasons why I don't really apply for jobs is my managerial training certificate is from Harvard University.
Mm.
So I don't need to apply for jobs. When I go to an interview, when I went to an interview, when I came to Beijing, I sent my CV to 5 schools and I got offers from all 5 schools. So the school that you graduate from does determine the offers you will get. It's my master's degree is from Manchester University, which is a very good university, and I have it in science, which kind of tells the people that you put the effort in the qualifications that you have. My PGC is from Nottingham University, and any school that applies or that looks at your hello.
Let me mute. Okay.
So the question here is, when I apply for a job, Nottingham University is as far as I know, it's one of the best PGCE schools, globally for education. So I always encourage people, if you're going to go do something, follow the school requirement and then do the best in that field. Like if you're going to be, like Hazel said, if you're going to do PYP, that's for primary. If you're doing MYP, you're doing middle school. If you're doing DP, do high school and then specialize in a subject. I'm a very firm believer. Even yesterday, somebody asked me they want to do IELTS. They want to apply for an IELTS job. And I said, you have the IELTS certification. So they said, no. And I said, well, get it. This is the link to get the IELTS certification. If you want to be an IELTS teacher, get the certification to say that you're an IELTS teacher. Don't apply with a TEFL and a degree and 5 years teaching at a school that had nothing to do with IELTS. For me, there's a need. Like I'm literally, all my teachers are now doing the ISS, AI and SCL, social machine learning programs, so that the government published a paper on Friday, I think. AI is now being integrated into the education system. There is a demand for it. All the students at the beginning of the semester were told, bring a computer to school. Computers now at students' desks are not a requirement, but it's strongly encouraged. And we are introducing DeepSeek as part of that learning program, because China's program, I think there is an AI requirement that they kind of use the Chinese AI, not ChatGPT, and that's why China's pushing for its AI to be the dominant one. And it's happening right in front of us. We've been told not to focus so much on skill writing as opposed to prompt writing, asking the AI for prompts to produce things. Since most of the paperwork the students are now doing, when we give them essays and stuff, they're doing it on AI, but they're using ChatGPT, and it's not appropriate because ChatGPT answers from a very Eurocentric, I guess, Western bias, whereas if a DeepSeek, they answer it in different ways. I mean, there is a political element to the AI as well. So personally, I think as teachers, we need to certify ourselves according to what the market needs, not the other way around.
And invest in yourself appropriately. These are not grudge spends. It's not like all of a sudden you have to go spend 40 or 50,000 RMB and it's a punishment. It's absolutely not a punishment that the market is asking of you.
I mean, you can check what a PGCE for Nottingham University is, one of the most expensive programs on the market. And I paid for it as my son was born, when money was very tight. And when my wife questioned me, I said, this is not an investment in anything else. I mean, I understand that we will struggle because as a parent, you always worry you don't have enough money. But I was willing to spend that because the payment after that, getting that PGC, the quality of the job that I was going to get was going to be much higher than what I was doing. And the middle school I went to with my son, and even coming to Beijing was part of my son. I asked my son, here's the list of schools that we can go to. I'll apply to in all of these schools, but which ones do you want to live in? And he said, well, this is one that has a badminton is one of the best in Beijing. And my son just won the badminton Beijing, or he came second in the badminton for Beijing competition today. So if you're serious about something, follow through on it, you know. And I think my school badminton is the best in Beijing, if I'm not mistaken. And I know in football we suck, but basketball is number 3 or something after bibs. But in terms of badminton, it's the best. So we made our choices based on our requirements, and we followed through on that. And when I applied for a job, I didn't have a doubt that I would get the job. There was no kind of, oh, they might consider me. There was no shortlist. You were on my shortlist, not the other way around.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like
So
to add on any?
if I can...
Oh, sorry. You
If
can
I
go
can-
on.
Yeah, sorry, Hazel. I like to believe, like, if you're doing IB, there are 3 routes to IB. One is you can do the workshops, and you can do 3 or 4 category 1 workshops, and then you apply to a school. But the school might not give you a chance because you don't have the experience. The other one is you don't have anything, you join the school and they will pay for it, which is becoming very rare. And they'll pay for the training and they'll give you the experience. But the easiest one is just to get a certificate from one of the universities. There's a list, I think, that was shared. The one I did was Western University. That was about 3 or 4 years ago. And you do the certificate. I think it was 20,000 RMB at the time. But once you have that certificate, every school that you apply for will say, oh, you're IB certified, then your experience counts. So I'm a firm believer in certifications and then follow through on that, you know. Like I said, I'm a bit older. I think I'm 50, which makes me a bit older than most people in this. So I remember a time when you could just walk into China or Asia, or I think you pretty much can, except China and Singapore, where you can just walk in and get a job as an English teacher, and they hired pretty much, you know, much anybody. But this has changed over the last 5 years, and now they are actually checking to discuss that what we said earlier about the safety certificates. Most international schools, they do 3 forms of checks now. They do the local check, which is a citywide check of your criminal history if you've done anything bad in another city. Because people used to do something bad and run to another city. They do one from South Africa, but they've added a third one now, which is an international criminal check, which is done by a company in Guangzhou, and all teachers will apply, at least to my school, and I know Biba is doing the same thing. They require the international. They pay for it, but they run your name through an international database. So there is a kind of strictly, and the safety diplomas now need to be certified and has to be done by an international body, which is done in the UK or the US, because of the emphasis on child safety, I think. So there's a lot of new certification that are required. But if I could say just one more thing, I think teachers need to start looking at AI education and integration of AI in their lessons, and learning how to design AI prompting, especially in the next 5 years.
Critical.
Yeah.
Also, just to add on to what Shakespeare's saying there, not just in terms of AI integration into your teaching plans or your lessons, but certainly into your general life as a teacher. You know, from a back end, I know that for me, it's become a day-to-day feature of preparation, of planning, of schedule of work planning, of time management and planning. So it's going to become a strong base from which we launch our careers. I had a pilot say to me the other day, he said, you know, we've had autopilots in our airplanes since the 1980s, and every year they get more advanced and they become more competent. But at the end of the day, what it's done to them as pilots is it's made them understand their aircraft better, and it's improved the level of piloting. It hasn't made the pilot redundant. It's just forced them to up their game. And I think the exact same thing is going to happen in the teaching game.
Yeah,
just
that's absolutely.
what Hazel, one last comment just before I think it's Shakespeare's turn. Sorry for monopolizing the time. CV management. When Shakespeare was talking earlier about you know, about having a Harvard reference on his CV in terms of qualification, when I've helped young teachers looking for work in the high school space in China, or in the college board space, because AP is where I'm focused and I want to stay in that track, this CVs generally are a mess. Cover letters are a mess. If your CV is not in the appropriate format and standard, and your cover letter is an absolute disaster, you are not going to get an interview. And I just don't understand why people, and we get CVs on a daily basis, and I've seen some that my CP laughs about, because these people take themselves really seriously, and you're just getting something that literally looks like a dog's breakfast hitting the table. You have to have the self-respect to make sure that every single thing you're putting out as a professional is it's representative of who you are and your work ethic and your standards. So you cannot compromise on CV management and CV presentation. And then going back to what Shakespeare was saying about AI, is a lot of the AI filters and that are looking at CVs these days have very specific requirements as to how they're indexing information in the CV itself. So, for example, if your CV it might look pretty with fancy colors and stuff everywhere, but if it's not going to get indexed by the AI, then you have a problem. So you need to keep up with what's happening and the norms and standards that are being imposed at the moment in the space that you want to work, and make sure that all your personal documentation is up to standard with what's happening today. And that takes work, that takes time, and we can see from a school side when we get CVs coming in, if we can tell almost immediately whether the person's done their homework or not. And if they haven't done homework, it's a sign to us that they're not up to date with what we require from staff in the current market conditions. So, like, do your research, do your homework, make sure that you're appropriately qualified, and then doors will open up. But the market, when the market rejects you because you're not ready for that, that's not the market discriminating on any base. That's just you're not ready for that role. So that's my major advice is, okay.
On that, Tom, David is saying that, can we get a sample of how the suitable resume would look like? So I guess on the EFH group, would you be able to share a sample of the right resume structure?
Sure,
Yes,
I can, but I can do that. Let me get one or two together tomorrow, and I can share. I will attach a proviso there, is that with computer systems changing the way they're changing, anything I give you now is out of date in 6 months' time. You have to stay, like, there's a lot of research that has tested. Yeah. So my major advice would be to really, it's about investing in yourself. You cannot, for you or me to keep up with trends in the kind of CV writing market is almost impossible. I would strongly advise to everybody, spend the money, go and find someone who's a reputable CV person, who is on top of the market with documented results. Go and talk to them about what that needs to look like. But I'll happy to do that for you. I will be happy to do that for you tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much.
The same goes for me as well. If anybody needs advice, I mean, I'm always answering people's questions. People are always adding me if they need help. CV is such an important part of interviews, and you want to leave an impression when you leave for an interview. So that is a very important point. Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, I've seen that when we organized what is it called? These meetups, right? With this company, sorry, let me not mention it. It was in Shanghai. The recent one was in Shanghai last year. I know that a lot of people were complaining that, hey, I left my resume. I had like 20 resumes, and I left them, to these schools, because they normally would have like meetups. We would organize meetups, and then the candidates meet the schools, basically. And a lot of people were complaining. So I think that if we do, I think that this particular topic is very useful, and it's going to be extremely helpful to our community as well, because people have been complaining that, hey, I'm sending my resume, obviously if it looks the same and it just looks average, and maybe not required by the school, then, they're not even going to look at it. They're just, going to look at the format and they're like, oh, this person does not really invest in themselves. So just to add on that, it's really, really important to invest into yourself. Right. So as we conclude this, Itu, do we have any questions that have not been answered? Mr. Shakespeare, would you like to answer this one?
I can answer that question. IB is a sort of an international program, so it doesn't really matter whether you apply for IB schools in Uganda, Kuwait, or China. The requirements would still be the same. The practical sense of IB, let's take PYP as an example. You've got to know what the units of inquiry are. You have to know what the inquiry cycle is. You have to know how to follow through on the summative assessments and the formative assessment protocols. If you can do your practicals in any country, it's pretty easy for you to transfer. As you might know, Russia banned IB, I think 2 or 3 months ago, and all the teachers in the IB schools had to leave. And none of them were worried. They all moved from Russia to other countries like Kazakhstan. Some of them even moved to India because it doesn't matter. Your skills are transferable between the schools. So I think I mentioned my son's got like a year and a half to go for high school, and then I retire. And one of the things I'm looking towards doing is going into more of the research side of IB, because at the moment the literature for IB support is not as much as they would like. So my plan would be to kind of go into providing answers for questions like the one she just asked, where we're looking towards, if somebody asks me, how do I transfer my skills from this to a kindergarten in China, then I could say, go and read this manual, go and read this guideline. So this would make it more acceptable, because at the moment IB kind of operates in a bubble in China, but it's actually part of a much bigger program. It's all over the world, that you might know, and it's part of the IB system, that the skills themselves, the teaching skills specifically, are transferable to pretty much anything. When it comes to MYP, you might have issues because there are certain topics which are not really accepted. How can I say this without, for example, the idea of inclusion could have issues when it comes to, like, for example, I'll use Beijing. WAB had an MYP exhibition, and they looked at gay culture in China and how that is not really being included in mainstream society. And they could get away with it because they were purely an international school. But if I were to take that into my school, there would be issues, because at the end of the day, we are still a school in China. We still have to abide by social guidelines, and this could be an issue. So there are certain programs, certain ideas, and certain things which you cannot fully implement in your program. And that is understandable, I think, right? Yeah. So I always tell people, if you're going to go into a culture, you have to teach. I mean, the idea of inclusion for South Africans, we come from a culture which is much more flexible with regards to speaking our mind, but then you go to a culture which might not appreciate that. They might not. You cannot go up to your boss and say, well, I think I'm going to do this. It's top-down management, where the boss tells you, this is what I want you to do. And if you then go and argue, what you're giving off is, I'm not happy with I'm questioning your competence. And since most of the people in China are qualified according to a specific, parameter of experience and qualifications, you might end up challenging the system, and that causes you to be labeled a troublemaker, which is not a good thing in China.
I think Shakespeare's hit the nail on the head there. At the end of the day, my advice to young teachers is just remember as well, you're not here to walk in and change the market. You're here to come and support the aims and objectives of the institution that's employed you. So be humble, walk in, and really work to meet the market where it's at. So I'm gonna steal that quote and take it back to school tomorrow. Shakespeare, thanks for that one. I like that.
Well,
thanks.
I mean, just a problem that came up a few weeks ago was a teacher was insisting on using his Windows software when the students were doing Canva designs for their summative assessment. And this teacher kept on saying to me, I'm not buying a MacBook and I'm not going to change. And I told him, well, all the students have, and they can do things like AirDrop and share documents and share pictures, and Windows doesn't have that. So he said, well, I don't like MacBooks and I'm not going to use it. So I asked him, then whenever we're having meetings and we all, airdropping documents and things, you're left out. He said, well, that's their problem. And I said, no, actually, that's your problem, because if you are refusing to blend into the school, then what will happen is they will mark you as a troublemaker, and this will be a problem for you long term. Because part of the Chinese social harmony program is, I mean, I don't really like MacBooks, but when I go to work, I take it. I forgot my MacBook at work today because I went in this morning. So, kind of expectations of how to work. If you want to get along, you have to play along. And I think that's where the problem comes in. We recently hired a South African lady, and the first thing they told her was, you need to buy a new computer. And then the school said, well, we'll help you to buy a new computer. And she kept on saying, no, but I have an old computer. I will just bring this one. They said, no, you have to. And it's different for us because I understand it's expensive. But as teachers, we have also kind of have to bend a little bit for the market. And I always say to people, when you think about it, we are very lucky to kind of be, accepted in such a way in these programs. It's not a right. It's not a given that we would be accepted. Schools have the right to also say we prefer a certain, kind of teacher. We prefer, obviously, within those guidelines. If it's qualification based, I would have an issue with that. And I think that's where the problem comes in, is that a lot of people apply at the school. They kind of think, well, I should get this job, but it's not. The schools also have a choice. I went to this thing that Hazel was talking about. A friend of mine wanted to look for a job, and I went with him, and I prepared 5 of my CVs just in case, because I didn't want to. And they pulled me into the room and they had a chat with me, and then I came out, and the following 2 weeks I had to deal with phone calls and messages of people offering me jobs. And I told my friend, how many offers did you get? And he said, I only got 1. So there is a kind of a market hierarchy based on qualifications, because he told me it's unbelievable that I didn't get any more offers. I have my master's degree. And I told him, because your master's degree is not at the same level as the one that other people are applying at. You're not competing just against, you're also competing against other teachers. And it kind of makes a difference. Your qualifications makes a difference when it comes to applying, and your willingness to adapt to what the schools require does make a difference.
Yeah. Well, qualifications, we can then conclude and say that qualifications really do play a vital role in selection at these K-12 schools and international schools, right? And I've seen, although this is a problem, because a lot of South Africans do complain about discrimination, that although our government and the Chinese government do have like some affiliation and agreement that us South Africans can legally work here and never have to worry about police legal related. But then at the same time, people have also complained and said that we get discriminated a lot. I would say that just to add on to that part, it is true to some extent, but then when it comes to these professional schools, they hire candidates on merit. So qualifications might not play a role at training centers and dodgy kindergartens and dodgy, public, and not to say there are no like good ones, there are good ones, but I'm just talking about, those dodgy ones. Yes, maybe they might do discriminate when it comes to that, but then when you apply at these schools, they do really hire on merit, and you really have to invest in yourself. As South Africans, I could say that we are it's because we've been given that, that the green lights from the Chinese government. So now we just come in here and then we relax and we're comfortable. So now that the market has been so saturated, and we have all nationals from all over the world. Everyone is just, on social media saying like, oh, I'm going to China. Everyone, legit, everyone wants to come to China and has came to China as well. So although we might complain about the market being saturated and maybe the market taking a downfall, at the same time, we also need to really hold ourselves accountable and really ask ourselves, okay, fine, market is saturated, market isn't doing well. So now how do I as an individual stand out? What investment have I done since I've been in China for almost 4 years? So those are all the questions that we also can point out, to ourselves, and also ask ourselves as well, and not just play the hand pointing game and just the blame game. That's in these group chats especially.
Hazel, maybe this is also a generational problem, but when I was studying, you get student loans. I don't know if you still have that, but we had to pay it back by working for the government. And my first posting was Stellenbosch University. And I don't know if you know Stellenbosch University's political stance in the 1990s. It was not a pleasant place to work. And I worked in the DF Malan Gebouw, as in the Engelse department, and literally everything was Afrikaans in the English department. So I've got a tough skin when it comes to discrimination. I've also got a sensitivity, but also an understanding for the requirements of adaptation. When we go and get something, we shouldn't always jump to, well, it's because I'm South African, well, it's because I'm this. And also kind of look at a mirror and say, how do you meet your program halfway? The qualifications China are set. Degree, PGC, 2 is experience, gets you the job that you want. If you want to work in international school, get the international qualification, get the safety diplomas. These are all things that come together. It's not a one size fit. Everybody has their own path. I mean, I didn't come to Beijing for the weather. The Beijing weather is really terrible. I didn't come here, for anything. I came here because of my son. My goal was very clear. I could have stayed in Shanghai, or I could have stayed in Jiangsu, which is a better place to live in terms of quality and Taobao deliveries. But I came to Beijing because my son wanted to come. And I'm willing to kind of sacrifice until he graduates. But at the same time, I'm not here to, kind of complain about everything and say, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. I'm here to do a job. My school is very nice, because having somebody with my qualifications on their board is quite a good thing. So they want to show me off whenever they have things. They invite people, they have me sit there. So then they go, oh, this person's from Tsinghua, this person's from Harvard University. So it kind of makes them look good. And when I told them that I want to do my PhD, they were very willing. So you have to discuss with them, tell them why you're here. I signed my new contract for the next 2 years. They were very generous in terms of what they gave, the benefits that we get. So I believe that if you're always willing to negotiate and you are willing to, invest in yourself. When I applied for my PhD, the school actually came to me and said, we'll give you some money to study your PhD. We want you to have that PhD. And if you're willing to stay on, we want to keep you in the research department. So I believe, I don't always, based on where I remember South Africa in the 1990s, which was much rougher than it is now, I guess, in terms of discrimination. So when I came here, the discrimination here is much more politer than what I'm used to, if you know what I mean. So I kind of have a hard shell when it comes to stuff like that. And I would say, if people come here with the attitude of, this is what I want to do, and then study towards it, work towards it. That's my thing, If you want to become an IELTS teacher, ask me. I'll give you the IELTS certification link. If you want IB, I'll give you the IB education links. If you want to do a PGCE, these are the links that you can do. This is the path to follow. We've had to change a lot. I remember teaching was with a chalk on a board. Those white chalk with a green board that swung this way.
Right.
And now we're doing AI lesson planning and, kind of these programs. So as teaching changes, the teachers have to change.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to share all the necessary...
Sure.
Okay,
All the necessary questions. Hazel has my WeChat. I'm always willing to help people. Everybody who knows me in the group says they can add me, and I will ask and I'll give them. I've given free IELTS certifications and workshops and PDQs and stuff. So anybody who asks me, education should be freely shared. I'm not a gatekeeper of something.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shakespeare.
Just ask
Tom,
Hazel.
anything onto that?
Yeah, just to conclude Shakespeare's comment there, and the market owes us nothing. And then, we can complain about discrimination all we want. What I have noticed is sometimes internally, in terms of class structure in China, it can be massively discriminatory on an internal basis, not even just external focusing. My experience with the Chinese hasn't been any form of racism. I quite enjoy my school. Like I said, our head of maths is from Kenya. My colleague in the office is a Zimbabwean. So everything I've seen is that the market is rewarding competence and qualification. Obviously, there's always the potential for background kind of unfair, racially biased discrimination, especially against like a perceived lesser value as an African. But really, the market will reward competence, and the market will reward skill sets. And if you are appropriately qualified and you can walk in and add real value to an institution, you will get a job. But I think days of the chance taker are done, and everything that the market's saying at the moment is the way forward for China is to really level up the game and get China on a par with what's happening in the likes of Singapore and Japan. And the focus from Beijing and Shanghai seems to be to really raise that bar in both the public and the private sector. So I'm very happy as a public sector employee. I have been my whole career. I've worked for public schools in South Africa. I've never worked for a private school out of choice, but that's my decision that I'm making for my own career, and I've got philosophical reasons for that. So, but we're all in the same space in this regard. So we really have to tool up. And we've got to look forward to going to work, and we've got to love our kids, and we've got to really push hard to make the best impact that we can make within the aims and objectives of the organizations that we serve, and that should be our primary goal.
Yeah, that is definitely right, and that is definitely the right mindset to also have as well. I think this is just like a general thing that when you focus on complaining and everything that is going wrong, obviously you're also going to automatically manifest more of those things. So I think if we as a nation and as a community could shift our focus on like, oh, this is bad, this isn't working, or the government this and this and this, it's really high time that we really focus on us as individual and really push onto those qualifications. I know it's not easy, but man, South Africans, everyone was in the recruitment industry a couple of months ago. I know that every time when you would recommend a candidate to a certain school, they would always say like, oh, South Africans drink and they don't show up to work, so we cannot hire them. We don't want South Africans, So we have a reputation. So if we can have enough money to be notorious all over China for drinking, then I'm sure we can, save up and get those qualifications. Yeah.
100%. And we should be tackling that reputation as a team. I mean, like nothing annoys me more than the 20 a night brandy and coke drinking South Africans that throw their name around Sanlitun in Beijing. Like we've got to try and break, as a team, we have to try and break that stigma about South Africans. It's good for all of us and good for all of our bank accounts if we can break that reputation.
Yeah, or else don't say you're from South Africa. Say you're from another country. Tell people you're from Namibia, and then the people think badly of Namibian. Don't do a proudly South African.
100%.
People who drink and don't show up to work, please don't say you're South African. Definitely don't say that. And also, I guess this one applies to me. Less traveling. I'm gonna try to tone it down a little because it has recently become an addiction. So
yes.
Thank you so much to everyone who was here. If we still sure.
Yes. I'll answer that. QTS is just a government registration. Basically, a PCE can be done if you don't have a kind of a degree in education. If you have an M.Ed and a PGCE, the QTS is just a matter of filling in the form and paying the fee. It's not a big thing. But an M.Ed puts you over the normal qualification. In China, you just need experience then. And if you're specialized in a science subject or like math or social studies, start in middle school because there's more scope with regards to subjects like history and social studies. But if you have childcare on your education, like for example, childcare in your program, then go for the primary level and don't start with grade 1, start with grade 3, because that's a good way to work your way and then work your way down. The best teachers are always found in grade 1 to grade 3. Grade 4, the skills have already been developed. You're just building on what the first 3 years have done. So there would be a very kind of direct or personal direction for that person. What do you want to do? What program do you want to fit into? And where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Awesome. I think that has been answered perfectly. Right. Any other outstanding questions? Please, guys, make sure to engage in the group. So you guys are free to answer, to ask any questions. Mr. Shakespeare has allowed us to add him. So if it's okay, then you can just ask those questions to him directly or on the group chat. Yeah, these are the questions
Okay,
that
I'm sending my WeChat now.
Oh, sure, no worries. These are all the
Okay.
questions that we can discuss, topics that we can discuss also as a collective, instead of maybe Mr. Shakespeare answering like the same question individually to like different people, So I think just engaging the group and asking all those questions also will be very useful.
Okay, no problem.
Right.
I really appreciate the fact that you guys are kind of organizing in this way. It makes sense to let people know what's available. I always hear this from people. There's no work. There's a lot of work. I mean, my school alone, we've actually gone into term now with one teacher less than what is recommended by the government, simply because we can't find somebody with a qualification. Last year, we flew a lady from Durban. We flew her in because we couldn't recruit internally. So they paid her flight ticket so she could come in, fill in the job. And this was a problem because we were desperately looking for a teacher that was qualified, that had some experience over the transition between PYP and MYP, so specifically grade 5 and grade 6. And there was nobody to fill that gap. So if anyone needs advice, I mean, the person who just spoke to me about the M.Ed, that would be a perfect position for them to take in the next 5 years, because the transition between MYP and PYP is always a problem, especially with regards to the way IB now looking at the continuum of education. So these are the jobs for young people. And if you can do AI certification in training, that would be the best for you. So it does kind of come to a pass. There's no one size fits all when it comes to programs. My career has been, for the last 20 years, probably just following the way my son is doing it and keeping ahead of the market. But in the first 5 or 10 years of my life, I worked in the UK for 2 years. I worked in Germany. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I love being a teacher, but I mean, you have to follow your interest. You have to follow what you want to do. No one can tell you what to do.
I'm not sure if you can
You mean me?
share
Are you asking me?
let's-
Okay. Okay. I work for one of the Beijing Royal School branches. So we've got 6 schools in China and one in the US, and there's one in Europe. So we are the oldest, probably the oldest school in Beijing. I think the 30 years old. And we offer the pathway from kindergarten to high school to university. And when you get to high school, we even offer scholarships for students going to university. So we really push the idea of getting our students into, international education. We recently had our alumni students from Yale University give us a video call to inspire our students. So our students come from, unlike what Thomas was saying, our students come from the affluent side of Beijing. So it's kind of a different market in terms of what they can do and what the resources are. Our campus is built. I didn't, like I said, I didn't choose the school because of the reputation. I chose it because their badminton program was one of the best, and they had an IB program I could fit into. But I know a lot of other schools as well, Biba, where there's a lot of schools you can look into Beijing that have good reputations and are recruiting right now. This is the golden time for recruitment. So if you send your CV in, the HRs in these schools, they give their emails and their WeChat openly. They're looking for people to to apply. So it's not like, oh, it's difficult to find in. If someone is qualified, they can even send me their CV. I'm willing to go to the HR and say, yeah, this is an actual qualified, South African. Sorry. Okay.
Just to add on to what Shakespeare's saying there, and just an aside thought, WAB, for example, runs, and I've been to one myself. I will go to the next one. They run the most amazing professional development sessions in-house. Like, give up a Saturday and a Sunday. Go to all the local PD sessions, whichever city you are in China. I know there's a magic one coming up in Shenzhen at the moment, with John Hattie flying over from Australia, talking about visual learning in the classroom. Spend the money, invest in yourself, and build the network. Because if you go out and build the right relationships, schools will bend over backward to help people that they know will add value to their team. But it's your job to prove to the school that you've got what it takes to add the value.
Yeah, that's right. That is absolutely right. And we also normally organize job expos with ISS as well. We will be continuing shortly since we've started in spring. And also something that I would also like to add on is that getting those qualifications is a lot convenient here in China because of, like the high salaries and all, like the cost of living is just really, really convenient, So we maybe want to obtain those qualifications. We shouldn't only be looking at China, just like as like, okay, it starts here and it ends here. We can also just apply in other countries as well. I know with the masters, I know like I recently applied in Canada and they required a master's degree. Most of the time when you're applying to like decent countries, like these like big countries and decent countries, the UK, Canada, Australia, the US, they mostly, when for teachers, they require a master's degree. So it is also a very good skill to obtain and good qualification to obtain. Not only just here in China, we don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, but should anything happen tomorrow, we shouldn't just now lose our minds and say, oh, we're going back to South Africa, where things are very, very bad right now. We all know that. So it's a good thing to actually upskill ourselves and not only say, okay, the degree, the TEFL, and that's it. We should try by all means to just really, really upskill. And also another thing that I also wanted to add is that when it comes to these international schools, it's very good. International schools, K-12 schools, they're very good, especially if you have like a family, you have dependents who would then be able to study there, because school fees is very, very expensive here in China, especially for us international, since the kids, international students cannot study at public schools. So when you get yourself at an international school or any good K-12 school, you can then be able to get all those benefits. And I'm not even going to dive deep when it comes to the actual compensation and money and all the benefits, the holidays. These are things that we want when we say, okay, now I'm here in China with my degree and my TEFL. Now, what am I going to do next? When I know myself, I always have like goals. Okay, once I've achieved that goal, I'm going to have another goal, So once we set in these goals and then we reach all those milestones, then we can see ourselves progress as a nation. And who knows, some people want to go back home, some people don't want to go back home like me. Yeah, we can then use those qualifications in other countries as well, not only just here, but other countries as well.
Perfect. So I work for a school called Rindao Fuzhong, or a group called Rindao Fuzhong. We've got several campuses across Beijing. RDFZ, RDFZ is a very proud public high school I think it's in like, for those of you who are from Jersey, like if you think about the likes of the Jeppy Boys or King Edwards, we kind of like picture, or Pretoria Girls, we're like in that kind of space. So it's a long-standing public high school in Beijing that's really well respected. And we only operate within Beijing. We don't have any other campuses outside of Beijing. And we run a regular high school program as well. So the kids have to decide after year 9, after they've written their Zhongkao, whether they're going to go the the kind of the joint, what we call it, a joint American program route, and write College Board certification with their Chinese subjects as well, because our kids have to double up and write the Shui Kao, or they're going to go the Gaokao route, and the kids have to make that decision at the end of grade 9. So it's tough for them. It's tears, it's pressure, it's stress, because they're running like effectively it's like writing 2 different matrics from 2 different countries at the same time. So the pressure is incredible, but it's amazing to see what they achieve.
Awesome. Right. If we don't have any questions, I think we can wrap it up now. Any questions that we do get further from this, we can then have the discussion in the group chat. And I would really like to express my deepest gratitude to Tom and Mr. Shakespeare for making your time and doing the presentation. This is very, very useful, I don't want to lie. And just for us to just openly have this discussion, I think it is really, really needed, Yeah, I think the next topic that we...
Hazel, sorry about this. Unfortunately, my name has a lot of R's in it, and I just got tired of people not being able to say my name, which is why I use Shakespeare. But if South Africans want to speak to me, they can use my South African name. Unfortunately, Chinese pronunciation when it comes to my name is a bit ridiculous, so I got tired of it. I know you call me Shakespeare. That's just the name I use on WeChat. I'm always willing to share my name. It's not a secret or anything. It was just that you guys knew me as that. That's why I added it. So if someone wants to call me by my South African name, I'm perfectly happy about it. But I just got tired of being called with an L instead of an R, because South African names have a lot of R's in it. So unfortunately, but please add me on WeChat and I'll give you my name and you can call me that, right?
Okay, so what's the right way of pronouncing your name?
Mubarak.
Oh, that's actually a very common name.
I know,
for us
but
South Africans, of course.
it's the R that throws most people. So I kept on being called Mubarak, which is from a cartoon, which I didn't like. So I just gave up on that and I just said, call me Shakespeare, or call me MB, because they can't pronounce. We have a South African with a lot of R's in their name, and they just give up and say, call me Jess. It's just easier than fighting with them, because most Chinese cannot say the R word, including my wife. So I just said, call me this because it's easier, and I don't want to hear my name being butchered. But my mother still uses my South African name. Okay.
Okay, no problem, got it. As far as I know, my experience, my school, they usually hire you get on board at the start of the academic year. So that is the first semester. It differs international school to international school because, again, they hire for different reasons. Obviously, they need teachers, but sometimes they hire because maybe a teacher has just left, immediately without any serving of notice. People leave during the school year and during the semester. So we can't really say they would hire during the semester or on the second semester. I'm not really sure about that. I cannot be certain about that. Right. Alrighty, thank you so much for everyone for showing up tonight. And we are going to let a week pass, and then the week after next week, is it the holiday? But when we come back from the May holiday, we are then going to reopen with a same topic, well, not same topic, but in the same umbrella. Yeah, the same thing basically. Yeah, since a lot of people have requested that they want to get into international schools, you know, how did people make it an international school? So I guess we can maybe answer questions, or the next topic could be along the lines of making the perfect resume, and the interview questions. We can also dive into that as well. So thank you so much for showing up today, and have a good night, a good week as well. Goodbye.
Thank you, Hazel.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.